Hey, everybody, my name is Mike Johnson. This is the Success Estate Podcast. Thank you so much for your time checking out this video. Today, I've got a great show with a great guest here, Mr. David Smith, 8-year home inspector, now retired, 25-year firefighter. David, thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, sir.
All right. Well, hey, I like to start this whole conversation. I guess let me start by giving you how I found out about you as an inspector.
Sir.
So I've been about 6 years. I'm coming up on 6 years as an inspector, and I was a friend of mine was looking at a house on Bill Owens. Oh no, right up the street up here, right off Judson Road. And I had somebody, another guy that had been doing a lot of inspections for me. He came over, and the sellers didn't appreciate him, or his inspection at the end of it. And so the agent, she calls me. She says, "Hey, who did you use for your inspector?" And I told him who it was. She was like, "What? Have you ever heard of David Smith? He does a really great job, and he's very attractive. He's good to look." And I was like, okay, why are you telling me this? Right. You know, so I want to put you on the spot a little bit, to say not only do you do great work, but people also notice how you present yourself. And so kudos to you on both of those.
Tell us hair today.
Yeah. You got you all together today. I just thought that was a funny way that she presented you to me, like, hey, he's
That's
quite the looker. And I was quite the. I was like, that's not going to matter to me very much, but I thought that was funny. Tell us a little bit about David. Tell us a little about what you do and why that's important.
With the home inspection side, where to begin? Home inspection. So history, experience. I absolutely think, well, it's hard to call things out or talk about deficiencies if you don't understand it, if you've never done it.
Sure.
Looking past the cosmetic, the paint and the floors, to look what's behind the walls or know what's behind the walls. And especially with new construction nowadays, I still find a lot of issues, but remodels, a lot of these homes were built in the 60s, 70s. Big trend is to go in, open them up. And with that being said, when you open up something, they got these things called load-bearing walls that hold the roof up, and when you take those out, there's an issue. It might not show now, but you walk in a 1960s house and you can see all the way through. Well, first thing in my mind is, we're going to make sure that this was done right.
Sure.
And so again, it's looking past the cosmetic things, because anybody can, look at the obvious. If you're buying a car, and there's a scratch on the paint or a dent, you see that, but you want to make sure that everything else is appropriate. And with that being said, too, it's not, most people think that home inspector, it's roof and structure or roof and slab.
Sure.
And, there's a lot more to it, just, making sure that your dishwasher works. And if it doesn't work, that's $1,000 fix. I mean, just making sure you put hands on everything. But again, with the experience, knowing that, cracks in brick doesn't necessarily mean your house is going to fall down, because if anybody knew how brick was put on, you'd be surprised it lasts 40 years.
Right.
So yeah, it's just every house is different, but
Sure.
you just kind of pick it apart and rule it out, I guess.
So would it be correct to say, hey, the home inspector's job is come in, look through the house, be, like you said, beyond the cosmetics, take a deep look into the home, and let the buyers know if there are any deficiencies that they should be aware of,
good or bad. And
good or bad. Okay.
I take a lot of pictures, and I guess that's a lot of my history in the fire service. Everything was about documentation. So it's gotten to where, my pictures went from 100 to 300 pictures, but there's a reason for everything. And again, it's a long report, but if I check the oven, if I check the water heater, if I check anything, I take a picture of it. And a lot of it's verification or confirmation for the buyer, but it also protects me, because as soon as I leave, somebody might not close on a house for 2 months and the water heater goes out.
Sure.
And then they call you up and go, hey, the water heater's not working. Well, on the day of, it was showing 130 degrees. So, but yeah, it's going through a house, verifying that, the issues noted or were disclosed, and how to fix it. Because a lot of times there's issues with practically every home, but it's I've got the experience to say here's your water heater. It's sitting on the floor. It's not panned out right. If it fails, and it's the old cliche when you're on vacation, you got water going out the front door, but you can fix this for $10. As far and having a pan temperature pressure relief drain line terminate to the outside, it's on the exterior wall, bam, no problem. So it's just walking people through and say, here's the issue, here's how to fix it.
Yeah.
And,
what made you decide to, like you say, you're firefighter for, I'm assuming, almost 15, almost 20 years before you decided, I'm gonna get into home inspections. What made you decide?
Well, all firemen have another job because we work 24
I'm glad
shifts.
you said that, because I was going to say, it seems like all the firefighters I know, they work more than one job.
Well, essentially, if you think about it, there's a lot of hours, but it's 10 days a month, and which was great for raising kids because I got to be there for my babies, and then when they got to school is when I started hitting it. But I work 24-hour shifts, and then you're off for 2 days,
sure.
and and you learn to go without sleep. So I did irrigation for 12 years, and then when I hit 40, old father time's catching up to me, and I don't mind working.
He's undefeated too, isn't he?
I mean it's going to catch you, and and even though my mind, I'm thinking I can work like I did when I was 20. I'd have to go home, start IVs on myself, and I would cramp up, and it was like at 40, I was like, I'm done with this.
Oh man, you ran yourself into the ground.
I
almost.
did. And it was, and I enjoyed it, and it was seasonal, so
sure.
You didn't do that all year long, but my wife actually talked to me about, she had a friend that was a home inspector, and it was actually Steve Minshew. And I looked at appraisals because, again, with my history, I've got a pretty extensive education background, and but with that, it was the time frame just wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
So
because of all of the requirements to become
2,500 hours apprenticeship, and then they have to carry you, and somebody's got to, it's pretty much monopoly.
And most of the appraisers don't want to.
They don't want the competition, so which is good for them. But I met with a guy named Steve Minshew. He's a home inspector, great guy, personal friend of mine, and in my opinion, the best. We had lunch one day, and he's like, here's how it is. There's plenty of work, and at that point, I'm coming up on kids and cars. I'm thinking I got to make some extra money.
Sure.
And because with 4 kids and twins, we picked up vehicles quick.
I don't know anything about that.
I know, right?
I'm a 6'3" and 2-year-old. Yeah. I may need you to train me.
I can teach you how to be. I can will it to you. And I'm doing that with my son. He's taking his exam now.
Oh, okay.
Right now.
Awesome.
So yeah, he got his background in construction management.
Sure.
He's been working with me for about 2 years, and he's still not ready. Which, love you, son, but there's still a lot. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot to it.
It seems like in this business, though, speaking of being ready, you kind of have to get in there to get ready. I was telling in our last episode, talking with our broker, I was like, all the things that I studied, they do come into play. Yes, they come into play. They're necessary. But I got hit with so many things that I was not expecting once I started.
Yeah.
It feels almost like you need to get through the test so you can get in there and actually start learning.
Right. Well, and again, the test, I mean, it's just like nursing or EMS. It's a national standard, which is, and I will say this, with the background and education I have, the home inspector course was the hardest for me because it's a national. You have to learn about coal-fired boilers in Chicago. You have to learn about basements in Indiana. It's a national. So actually, if we decided to move, I can go anywhere in the country.
Okay.
And there's a national and a state. So the state was easy because that's what we do now. But the national standard was a challenge just for the fact that I'm not used to the load of snow on roofs in Minnesota. So their degree of construction is 2x6 walls for insulation, different things where we don't have to deal with that here. But so you pass the exam, and then of course we follow a TREC standard, so there's code because every year code changes. And TREC is slow to catch up, but we follow a TREC standard. So some of the codes now may not necessarily follow under Trek standards. So so that's where we're at on that.
Those codes, are they? Those are given by the state or local?
Well, yes. Now there's a national, and state can supersede national, city can supersede state, but yeah, the state comes out with something different all the time, and it's they got to make their money one way or the other.
Sure. Things. And I guess I have to always try to remember that they're supposed to be doing it for safety.
For safety. Some of it's overkill.
And and as being I was going to ask, being a firefighter, you probably see all my plugs and everything over here. I was hoping I wouldn't get any trouble with you for my setup, but is it your experience as a firefighter, did it come in and help you as a
yes, and so with home inspector, we call out, let's say gutters terminating next to the house. It could undermine the slab, which is worst case scenario. And most everything you call out in the house is worst case scenario. Windows have to open in the bedroom and stay open for egress and access if your house is on fire, which is obviously worst case scenario. But with me, I have the two hats where I've got the construction background and I've got the fire side. So I can tell you Federal Pacific panels, FPs, they quit making them back in the 80s.
Lord.
Bad.
Man,
They failed.
whenever I see them, I'm like,
Well, and there's a reason for that, because FP, your breaker's your fire protection. So if you have a load, you have a circuit in the bedroom. Let's say you have kids over and you got a bunch of girls over and they're running 14 hair dryers, or you're pulling too many amps and it should trip the breaker. It doesn't. So it burns through the wires and bam, you get a house fire, and you would have got me on my other job. But for me, I call out the FP because they fail. Me on this side, I worked the majority of my career on the south side of town, which was older homes, which had the FPs, and they burn. I mean, they fail. So it's a latent fire hazard.
Yeah.
And so that's a challenge. And, of course, ground fault receptacles, wires and wiring.
In your firefighting days, did you ever have to go in? And we watch a lot of TV shows and things like that, but getting on the inside, I know that we're mainly talking about home inspection, but I always found firefighting. I actually had a play brother in Dallas. He's been encouraged, man, you need to, when he started, this is probably 3 or 4 years ago, man, you need to come up here and be a firefighter. They pay well. You got, your time and everything, all this is great. Do you actually have to go engage the fires like we see on TV?
Fight them from the inside out.
Fight them from the inside out. Because he was saying that they don't really do that up there anymore.
There's now if they're volunteer, a lot of volunteer guys. Defensive is if everybody's out, and it's odd because when I pull up to a home inspection, when I step out of the car or the truck and I have my son and I'm talking, I said right now I'm taking it all in, and you did that on the fire scene where, at 11 o'clock in the morning, if you have a structure fire, you roll up first couple in. You're getting an assessment, you're looking, there's no cars in the driveway, so typically at 11 o'clock in the morning, most people are gone. It's different at 11 o'clock at night. 2 o'clock in the morning when you roll up and there's 2 or 3 cars, so you're thinking rescue. But, yeah, I mean, and again, on the south side, we had a lot of fires and, 30, 40, 50 a year, and it all depended, but there's nights where, you got bumped out on the structure about every night, and there's times where you might go 3 months, and there's times where you get 3 or 4 in a day. You're just like, God, I'm done. But
what's been a tough situation for you? Like, what's been one of the harder fires that you've had to engage in?
Well, it's typically when when you roll up to the house, and again, if it's at night, most of the time people are outside, and when the first in engine pulls up and they're giving a size up, single story residential structure, flame, smoke showing, whatever, and they're starting to bark orders to people coming in, the officer will step off truck, and if there's people there, family, they're like, is everybody out? Because that's the first thing. No.
Right.
Well, now you're thinking not so much fire attack, now you're thinking rescue. So now, those guys are going in, and that's why it's always important to have an evacuation plan, because everybody needs to meet at the mailbox, because the family could be in the front and Junior's in the backyard fine. Now but you got 5, 6, 7, 10 guys going in and braving it to go, to go find Junior. And so, yeah, it's
an evacuation plan. You're talking about
everybody
family,
in the house. Yeah.
Everybody in the house. So what's the ideal evacuate us on that if you don't mind?
Meet at the mailbox.
Meet at the mailbox. However you get out of the house. Meet at the mailbox.
You know, and of course we've all watched TV, and they're all blowing and going, and the guys walk in, and you know they can talk and they can see. When the house is when it's rolling pretty good, you can't see your hand in front of your face. So you know, as in the fire side, I'm getting pumped up.
Yeah, I love it.
As a in the fire side or fire department, you've got to be a type A, and you know, the old cliche, you know, we want a fire. Well, I don't want anybody's house to burn, but if it is burning, I want to be the first one doing a gainer through the front door. And again,
that's your football days coming out of you?
Well, I mean, we would run through, woo, spinning that nozzle, and then you trip over furniture.
Right.
Nobody saw that. But my crew, and I'll tell you too, I didn't promote through the fire service like I thought. When I first hired in, I wanted to be chief.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2005, I went to work for promoted to engineer driver. So it was a pump operator on whatever apparatus. And I went to work with a guy named Colby Beckham. Man, it's tough. I worked with him for 14 years. I mean, I worked with him till I retired, and you know, we've been in hundreds of house fires, you know, just EMS calls. We hunted, we fished, we raised kids, we went through divorces, and because you think about, you're at the fire department 24 hours, 7 o'clock in the morning, so you're with those guys more than your family, and we worked out together. You could confide in them, you know, and sometimes they told you what you didn't want to hear, but it was, and my tailboard, Tommy Carden, he was with us 11 years before he retired, so we had 70 years experience on that one truck. And Colby, you know, if I had a flat tire in a cornfield in Illinois when I'm up there bow hunting, I could call Colby and he'll come. I mean, he's that. There's a lot of people say it, and it's super easy to say, you know, I got your back, but that guy, and just like Tommy TC, that you know, he give the shirt off your back. And there's a couple guys like that, John Williams, and people I worked with for 20 years. I mean.
Are these gentlemen still actively?
I think Colby's the only one left that's still working, and he's a younger fella. He's younger. He's 50 or 49, but you know, just very smart guy. We call him the Godfather. He's like 6'5", and everybody goes to Colby for advice. So he's just like, you know, he walks up and everybody's screaming, and he's the kind of guy that's like, I got it. I got it. So, and that's the kind of guy you want. You don't want, you know, people freaking out over, you know, you got people jumping out of windows and stuff. You just have to take it all in.
And I guess this is a good point to, you know, to say, for one, thank you for putting your life on the risk putting your life in risk for others. To all those that he named, all those that are, you know, currently, was actually playing basketball this morning with a good friend, Woody. He's a firefighter.
He's a younger fella.
I was beating up on him this morning. Woody, if you see this, I don't take it back either. I enjoy it. Actually, I love to battle with him. But all of you guys that you know, that put your life on the line.
He's always smiling.
He's always good guys, really good people. I always appreciate being around him. It seems like when you were talking, it kind of reminded me of what I would feel playing sports and being on the team when you're locked in with some guys, and you know, we're not, clearly our life isn't on the line. But I was expressing to my wife, it's hard to, you know, my goal now is to build a community with other guys, you know, not to the same degree. You know, now we're just wanting to be great fathers, great men. But it's something about when guys are able to come together and you know that somebody is, as they say, they're riding with you. You know, this guy's going to have my back. We're going into a situation we've never been in. It's hard to recreate that. Yeah, exactly.
You know, and that's and again, type A personality, but it's the person I've been that if I do it, I want to be 100%. You know, I'm 52 years old and I still like to work out. But when I was in the fire department, every guy on my truck company, we could bench 400 pounds. I could run a mile and a half in, you know, 7.5 minutes. And because it was just, I didn't want anybody to look at me and go, I don't trust him.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to think that, you know, it's the old cliche again, but dragging somebody out. Because when I was in fire school, you know, I had a guy that got sick when we were dragging out a dummy back in the, you know, middle 90s. So I grabbed the dummy and him and drug him out. But, But it's
That's almost like the military.
yeah,
It almost seems like the military.
Yeah, it's yeah, and I mean,
I was going to ask you, did you have any military
no,
training?
and that's my one regret.
Really?
When I was in college, it was 90 when we hit the first Desert Storm, and I was, second, third, fourth, fifth grade, Mom used to bring me home World War II books, and I read. I knew it. I always said I was reincarnated, but I loved World War II. I was just everything from land, sea, and everything. And I mean, I was this close. And that's even now. I give $100 discount to my vets and my Army, military, not even vets, but active fire, police, nurses. I think it's professional courtesy, but I try to give them a little push too. But yeah, surrounding yourself with guys that motivate you, because nobody comes to the fire department and goes, hey, y'all go pile up and watch TV all day. No, these young guys, we walk in like, get your tail in the weight room, dude, because it's like, your wife get paid to work out? No, mine doesn't either, but you do here, so get your tail in the gym.
Yeah.
And
you gotta, I guess with young guys, I probably would have been, maybe somewhere along the line of, hey, there's no fire, I can rest, but what's that old saying? You don't prepare for times. You prepare for times of war and times of peace.
You don't practice
when
on
there's
the
no
patient.
fire going on. Now let's prep for
and
for the eventual fire.
There's training a lot, because like you just said, if you don't use it, you lose it. And we had so many new guys that came in, and and I look at that too with the home inspection side, and that's my analogy is that again, I've got half a lifetime experience in the construction field, but I'm a home inspector. Well, a guy that gets his cert today walks in, he's like, hey, I'm a home inspector, so we have the same cert. But years ago, before I retired, we had some new guys come in, and one guy mentioned that he was something like me, and I turned to him, I was kind of rude. I'm like, you ain't crap like me, son. I said, I forgot more fire you'll ever see. And with having having hundreds of house fires, thousands of EMS calls, and but we have the same patch. So we're not the same. And
right.
But
well, that's I imagine that somehow shapes some of the way you do your work as an inspector. What can you talk about some situations that you've been in as an inspector where you've walked up or you've done an inspection and you were like, hey, this is the type of house I would have hated to have to come and because you can see all the writing on the wall of, hey, this has the potential for a fire.
Well, again, there's some of the older houses have odor problems, and that's what I always told my son is that
odor problems like what? But I know you said the wiring.
Well, code back water heaters.
Water. Oh, really?
Water. So I call it. This isn't a technical term. I call it a killer closet. So, and I've got tons of blogs, but let's say in 1960s, so things that were code back in 60s and 70s, just like in a 70s home where you walk down the hallway and there's a water heater sitting on the ground, it's not panned anywhere. That was code back then. So again, if it fails, and you need a flood stop now to fix that, but let's say the water heater, you have a gas-fed water heater that's sitting on the ground and it's in an enclosed closet. Well, if you have a candle and you put a jar over it, the candle goes out. Well, same concept with the gas-fed water heater. You've got gas-fed, closed door, zero ventilation.
Gotcha.
So if you don't have appropriate ventilation, you get elevated carbon monoxide numbers, which will kill you. And the other thing is, if you don't have, and typically you need two ways of airflow. So if you open the front door, you need to open the back door to get horizontal air, which is positive pressure. And again, that's fire side, is that people would smoke up their kitchen all the time, and we would open windows and put a fan in the front door. So you need positive pressure or at least two ways of air to flow. But if you don't get that neutral air to let the draft hood on top of the water heater draft out like it's supposed to, then pressure on the outside is greater than the inside, and it'll push the exhaust back into the house. And a lot of times you'll see that where you have cold and hot water going out, there's grommets, little like blue and red grommet, and they're just melted up. So you know that the heat's been pushing back in.
Wow.
So you get a double whammy with the elevated carbon dioxide and the push back in, so which is wrong, but the fix for that is air. And a lot of times you can put just a supply vent in the attic area or on the ceiling that vents to the attic, and maybe do an air gap on the bottom of the door, or a vent on the bottom of the door, and a lot of times you'll see where they use 4-inch PVC. They'll drop in from the ceiling and cut holes, but it allows air to flow.
Right.
But again, that's a huge problem. And one thing that I do, and I know, well, I don't know, but most guys probably don't, but I have carbon monoxide detectors. I have true gas sniffers with me. That any gas appliance in the house, I check it for gas, and because if it has a rigid black pipe, that's there. They, the plumbers did that 40 years ago, used pipe dope, and it's pretty solid. But wherever they come off that with the flex, I find gas leaks all the time.
Really?
All the time, and they just need to tighten them down more. But yeah, CO. I've got a video years ago that I did, but typically 38 parts per million is your high limit. So if we had a house fire and we're on air, and we can't come off air to start doing overhaul once the fire's out, till the fire marshal walks around with his CO detector, and if it's 32, he's like, all right, cool.
When you say we're on air,
air packs.
Oh, okay, got
So
you.
So you can't come off,
Sure.
Because those things weigh. And again, you're working and trying to breathe, and so you always want to come off air. So 38 parts per million. Well, some of these water heater closets, I set my CO detector in there, and I'll let it run for about 5 minutes. And there's one time it was alarming, and I opened it. I'm videoing it while I'm opening it up the door, and it's at 700 and something parts, which will kill you.
Right.
So I called the buyer's agent, and I got the listing agent, and I got the actual people at that house. There was no smoke detector. There was no carbon monoxide detector. And I called them. I was like,
this has got to be.
You got to get a CO detector. I mean, if anything, you got to fix this. But it was bad enough that, something like that, you just wonder why every day they're probably waking up with headaches with carbon monoxide poisoning that, just
they don't even know.
Yet,
they just think something normal's going on with their body.
Dead.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, sheesh. And that's a scary part, and I guess that would, if those that are watching and listening, they're probably thinking, okay, what's the role of the home inspector? Is to to see, especially if there's exactly. And now it's funny because I was gonna say, do you feel like kind of like a safety man, like you're the?
Well, even smoke detectors. Again, in my previous life, I've seen houses burnt, slapped to the ground. Smoke detector looks like a burn up Buckeye, and it's still going off. So a $10 alarm will save your life, and and people, when they start chirping, you pull it instead of putting a battery in, which is, come on now. But
I've been guilty of that.
Well, I mean,
there was actually an old video of mine that I watched, and I heard it chirping in the background, ding, ding, and I was like, oh Lord, I should have done that a long time ago.
Well,
where should people put smoke detectors?
Well, and that's, of course, that's going to be on the report. In any sleep room, long hallway. If you sleep in a closet, you need to put one in the closet. But it's a given now. Now, and again, if it fails, I did one yesterday on Sunday. I worked still, but I did one yesterday. Brand new construction, pulled. It's hardwired, but there's one pulled in one of the bedrooms. So it fails. Even though it's hardwired, you still have a battery backup, because let's just say the power's out, and then you have battery backup. So it'll still chirp when the battery goes down, even though it's hardwired. So.
And I was going to ask, so you talked about, you just said, you were inspecting a new build, right? Now I've talked to people, that say, I want to buy a new house because it's going to be, they feel like it's going to be in much better condition than those that are. What are your thoughts? Should people get brand new houses?
It'll surprise you.
Really?
Yeah. And without getting in too much detail, it was just a couple weeks ago, I did a $1.2 million home that was wrong. I mean,
wow.
Issues that I found that, there's circuits that weren't working in the house. Plumbing vent stacks. There's a rule of thumb where, the plumbing vent stack's got to be within, 6 feet of the P-trap, let's say. And, you got everything running in the attic area, spray foam, but it's, there's 60 feet from the kitchen to the first plumbing vent stack. So if you don't have neutral air again, it's like pouring getting a gallon jug, turn it upside down, kabloop, 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 so it doesn't flow well. So
right.
you have the plumbing vent. Purlin jacks. So you have a roof.
I'm about to say, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, roof rafters, purlin jacks. So your jacks hold up the wall or hold up the roof. Well, those purlin jacks will rest on a load-bearing wall or header, not a ceiling joist. Ceiling joists are made to hold the sheetrock.
Right, right.
And, I ran across this where, most of the house, and especially the garage area, was resting on ceiling joists, and that's wrong. And, of course, it ruffs everybody's feathers. When I call out something that should have been called a long time ago, and I did one it was probably 6 or 8 months ago in Lindale where the listing agent was actually there, and I did the inspection, $800,000 house, and he's like, well, you're not going to find anything. We had it inspected last week. Well, before long, found out that the AC wasn't working, and of course it's the old cliche, did you check the breaker? I'm like, yeah, I checked the breaker, and I ran it out to the disconnect, power to the disconnect, outside unit's not working, your AC doesn't work, so that's a problem. But it's also when you get in the attic area, and those purlin jacks are resting on the ceiling joist of a big opened up pony wall, 12, 14-foot ceiling, and which is wrong. And I said, this should have been caught should have been caught by your other guy, but it should have been caught by the builder, should have been caught by the framer shouldn't have done it to begin with. But when it gets to me, that's a big issue. But they have to open up the garage, run up there, and put a big header across there and support it right, because if not, that weight of the roof will sag over time, because the way the roof is made, the roof runs down the purlin jacks or runs down load-bearing walls, and is actually supported, the weight disperses to the slab, period, not ceiling joists, not, and so, and you have to grade on
it is the most capable structure to hold up all of that.
It's what it's there for, and that's why, you mentioned something about our new homes better now. 70s house, in my opinion, 70s home built better than anything.
Really? Because I do have to tell people, like so when they come to me and they're like, yeah, we want a brand new house because I don't want to have all the issues, and I'm just like, okay, I don't know how to break this to you, but you're still going to need to have the home inspected, because for one thing, these are human beings that are building this house. Well, I may know the builder, but he's probably subcontracting the work.
Well, that's absolutely. The builder's not building anything.
Right.
The builder's in his office making a phone call to the electrician, the sheetrock guy, the plumber. And so typically your builder has good subs, but sometimes, when you and I don't want to name drop, when you have good builders, let's say I want to go out and start building houses. Well, I'm going to call the same people that Hamilton uses, but they're not going to use me because they're busy. So I'm going to get the best worst case scenario, and I hate to say, but then they'll come to work for me. But if I can follow them and say, no, okay, this looks right or not, but there's a lot of builders out there that can write a check, but they don't follow their people behind, and that's when I get up in the attic and find exposed PEX water lines, and I get in an argument with the plumber because he's saying there's no code to insulate PEX. I'm like, are you kidding? There is, but
and this is a funny place because I'll get a lot of professionals in a specific industry, like the electricians or the plumbers or whoever else. Yeah. And they have sometimes a little bone to pick with inspectors because they believe that
we're stupid. We don't know what we're talking about. Well, there's a cliche too. Now, unfortunately in my field, we have to justify it, but I don't like to guess. And if it's obvious, that's one thing, but sometimes we call it a Friday at 3 o'clock job. Sometimes they were in a hurry and didn't do something, or did just a halfway job, and we're all guilty of it. But unfortunately with me, I'm the one that finds it. And it's, again, doing a home inspection on a brand new build, I can whip through it. It's doors, windows, nice. Attic, problem.
Sure.
And
and especially because that can't be seen, to the naked eye. And that's, when I'm cautioning people, like, hey, listen, even if you're going to get a new build, you want it newly built. So those are the factors that I try to lay out. Your builder, he may do some things in the house, but he's not the one that's it would take him too long to build a house himself. Right. So he's got a subcontract. And hopefully, there are a lot of great subcontractors out there. But you have to think about people with people. Sometimes you're going to get people that will want to cut corner because they may be tired, or they just don't believe that the new codes that have changed or the new way of doing things, that's not the right way. All those different things, So it's important. If y'all are thinking about getting a newly built home, it's still very important for you to have a home inspector come and look at it, even if it's just for your awareness. If you decide at the end, I'm not going to hold this against the builder, which I don't think you should do. You should have those things corrected, but at least you're aware. You need to be aware of everything.
Warranty,
it's still under warranty. That's true.
But it's like going to the doctor and getting a good bill of health. I wish I could go to every home inspection and walk away and go, man, you're good.
The last one you gave me was a good one.
It was a good one, and that was,
appreciative.
but for that house that was built
In the
late 70s,
Mhm.
early 80s, something
Mhm.
like that. That, you know, and this is my old cliche, and believe me, I mean this with I don't know, I've already built it up. You want to buy a house from an old person, period. Older people, old. I'm 52, so I can relate. But you buy a home from older folks, they typically take care of business, and so that's nice. And again, it might be an older house.
They don't
lived in
defer
for
the
50
maintenance.
years, and yeah, they've taken care of it. Now with that, a lot of, you know, again, a 70s home might be in great shape, but it might still have 70s water heater issues, and so we have to bring a lot of those up to code, ground fault receptacles, and again, something as simple as GFCIs can save people from getting shocked. And you know, and I've worked in this industry a long time, and I've been zapped a couple of times, and it all depends on where it runs across your body, you know, because kids, it's all about kids when it comes down to this, because you know, when we're working a cardiac arrest, and you know, it's like you see on TV, you know, clear thump, it's the same concept, but we're on both sides of the heart, and we're popping that heart. But if I get hit, that electricity could run down your leg, it could hit you in the heart, could hit you anywhere, and so that's, you know, good Lord's over there saying, I'm going to give you a pass today, so, or not, and
don't go back over there.
don't do it again. My wife, she's in the electrical field, and she works at Elliott Electric, so she knows. She's my one. When I run across things that I don't know, I'll send her a video, and of course she's got, you know, of course she knows, but if not, she's got people to ask, and she'll text back and say, you know, don't touch it, or you know, that's going to kill you. But we built a new house a couple of years ago when the kids got older, and I'd built the shop, and I was wiring it in. Of course, I'm not turning anything off because it's me. I'm Superman. And she came outside. She's like, "What's wrong?" You know, my hair's smoking, and she said,
"Your
no,
hair was smoking." Oh, I was about to say, really? Is that true? Like Home Alone?
She's like, you know, the house flickered, and I was like, "Well, we're gonna shut these off because I'm, you know."
So you I think you told me that you have some building experience, right?
Yeah. I started doing this when I was a kid, and I haven't done it my whole life, but you know, in those younger years, of course, since then we've remodeled a bunch of homes, and but yeah, I mean, I did this when I was, I mean, especially in high school, I was working all the time. All these, you know, the guys were at the lake and on Saturdays, and I'm making that $4 an hour.
Yeah.
But
cheap labor.
I had the best tan around. I had on shorts and shoes and a tool belt and a hat, and you know, and we get after it. But
do you think that helped you a lot in what you know, especially what you're doing now? I mean, to be able to give
there's no doubt.
buyers confidence, like, hey, this isn't a like you told, you know, you were, you know, letting my people know, hey, this is what you could do to repair this, you know.
Or even when they say, what would you do? I'm like, really? Here's what I would do here. I would, you know, because again, it's, you know, we've done a bunch of remodels. So the whole time I'm thinking, I'm walking in, I'm like, well, here's how you can make money. Or, you know, you've got this huge back porch. It's under roof. It's on slab. You got plenty of room for your AC. You close this wall off. You just made, you know, $150 a foot. You do the math. You just made a couple, you know, 20 grand. But
interesting.
But no, it's nice because, you know, I did a lot of teaching before too, because with the new home inspectors, they have to do so many write-outs, and I did it for a while, and I'd have these people walking around with me, and I know the day I had that aha moment. I was talking to these guys about, you know, the doors weren't closing appropriately. I said, you need to replace it or move this. And I said, what's this called? And the kid's like, well, I don't know. I was like, you don't know what a strike plate is? It's like, have you ever hung a door? No. What? How can you tell people how to fix something if you've never hung a door, if you've never framed a wall, if you've never put in sheetrock, if you've never wired, if you've never done your plan, if you've never decked, if you've never, how do you, you know, I changed my oil. I'm not a mechanic, you know, so I don't go change my oil, go get, you know, take a class. Now I'm a mechanic when when I can barely change my brakes.
Right.
And so.
Interesting. Okay, so of course, everybody that I've had on in my previous episodes, we all know just what's been going on the last 3 years with the pandemic. What was it like for you during the COVID years? How was your business and everything?
It didn't slow me down a bit.
Didn't slow you down a bit.
Yeah.
Did it pick up for you?
It's all been pretty steady. I think the only thing that's hurt me or changed anything was the last 2 or 3 months. With the interest rates, you know, it's kind of slowed things right down.
Yeah.
No, during the COVID time, you know, if people had COVID, I went anyway.
Sure.
You know, I just kind of that fireman mentality. But, you know, when I did get it, it got me good. But
Really?
But, yeah, I let people know I had COVID, and I still went and did inspections. So I never missed a day.
Sure, sure. As far as, you know, that now that things are, of course, constantly changing, how has any technology affected the industry since you've been?
For me, the hardest thing is thermostats. Thermostats. I know it's, you know, I like the one where it has cold, off, heat, on, or whatever. But sometimes I've got to get on my phone and Google, like try to figure out these things, or even irrigation. Like I said, I did irrigation for years, and you've got controllers. Now they've got these Bluetooth controllers. So I just take them apart and find the wires and hook my activator and run them individually because I can't figure out how to pull equipment.
Actually, I had one in Marshall, the appraiser. He didn't know how to work the thermostat, and so we had to prove to him that there was heat in the home. Yeah. He said, "Hey man, it's locked up," and the seller was like, "It's not locked. What are you talking about? I don't like. It's just a regular thermostat. To them, it's a regular thermostat."
But yeah, sometimes you know satellites got to link up and everything. But and that I learned a long time ago too. I carry batteries, you know, because it's, you know, again it's tough to run the Carthage, and you get out in the country. And the thermostat doesn't have a battery, so you can't say, "Well, I didn't check it," because it makes you look bad. So I've always got plenty of batteries.
Keeps them recharged. Do they even do rechargeable batteries?
No, they're double A's most
of the time. Do you use things like drones for or anything
no drones,
like that?
I get on the roof. I'm adamant about that. I know a lot of guys do, and that's your choice. But I think it was a year ago or so. I do some work in Tyler, and a realtor said, "You know, you're the only inspector I know that actually gets on the roof," and which. With that, I mean, it doesn't bother me to get on the roof, even if it's a 20 or 30 pitch. You know, typical of 20 pitch is pretty tough.
Those things are scary.
But
Those are scary.
Well, I've got cougar paws, so I get on. You know, I have the same shoes that the roofers have. That help. Now, of course, when you have that kind of a slope, but you know, these guys with drones, I mean, you can't get hands-on mechanical wear. You can't see, you know, hail damage. You can't, you know, the rays flashing. You don't see the limb strike from a big tree limb that's dropped, you know. And for me in my inspection reports, I take a lot of pictures. But if I have a moisture stain in a bedroom, I'm going to take pictures of that. I'm going to use my thermal imager, my moisture meter. I'm going to verify if it's wet or not. I'm going to take pictures of it in the attic area. Then I'm going to get on the roof. And so I have you know, I try to explain it where, you know, I don't just say, "Hey, you have a moisture stain, have somebody figure it out." I try to, you know, do that. And if I can rule it out, you know, if you have a new roof that, you know, that stain could have been from 30 years ago.
Sure.
But it, you know, when it was raining like cats and dogs the other day, the buyers were like, "Oh, I feel bad for it." I'm like, "No, this is actually, it's good because I can see pooling water. I can see grade. I can put hands on." And, you know, when you get in the attic and there's a 5-gallon bucket, you know, and it's half full of water, that's a problem.
Now it's funny. I had a interview with an appraiser with our episodes a couple episodes ago, and we were talking about artificial intelligence. You know, it's starting to pick up a lot of steam. He was like, "Man, I think it's going to put me out of business." And I told him, I said, "There's some technology that I think is that threatens some. Like, I mean, I feel like it would be more threatening to my job than it, because you need somebody to go in and touch the house. He called it smell the house. You know, you need somebody to go in, and that was just a word that he used. Somebody needs to be able to go in and smell the house. And I said, unless these things grow legs, you know, and they're able to go in and test, you know, different features in the home, I don't ever see that happening. No. So I think that, you know, some technology is good, like the thermal.
Thermal imager, I live and die by that bad boy.
That's something I think is crucial technology.
Well, the thermals come around the last few years, but you know, again, from the fire side, I remember when those guys were the size of a, you know, just, they were huge. They were $20,000 back then.
Whoa!
And of course, we've used them. We use thermal imagers on, you know, we might get bumped out on, you know, smoke smell or alarm go off, and we use it for ballast. You know, finding a hot ballast, which is sometimes a challenge, but I've been using thermal imagers for over 20 years, and now I've got the one where I run through my house. I'm looking for water, you'd be surprised at some of the hot spots in the wall. Just a hot spot where you know that's electrical, where something's made up wrong. And But I look for a lot of water. Now, again, with moisture stains, if I put a thermal imager on it, you can tell hot, but you can tell cool. And, of course, the meter can tell you a lot too. But I run through the house on every inspection. I'm looking behind any plumbing fixture, because if there's water, if there's a master on that side or master bathroom and you're in the master bedroom, I'll look on the wall adjacent to it, because I'm looking for water leaks or from the plumbing vent stacks. You'll always see water. And a lot of times they'll paint over. They won't disclose it, but I'll try to find it that way. But
one of my most embarrassing moments calling the fire department a couple of years ago, or maybe like last year, I was in the house and I was in the back room, my oldest son's room. It's like, man, I smell something burning. I went down, looking around the kitchen. Okay, there's nothing burning in the kitchen, nothing in the fireplace.
Attic.
And I said, oh man, let me run up to the attic. And I'm up in the attic, crawling all the way to the attic is in the garage, and I'm having to, stay on that on the, not the joist, but
that would be joist.
Yeah, the joist. So I'm having to walk all the way down. I said, man, there's no smoke, there's no fire, no anything.
That's
what's
when you
going
need a thermal
on?
imager.
And so I called the fire department, because I don't like to panic. That's the one thing I feel like you can't do anything well when you panic. But when I couldn't find anything, I said, well, let me call the fire department. And they came out and they pointed that thermal imaging at the ceiling fan, and the motor was burning.
Well, that's good though. At least because that's the worst case, catches on fire when you're.
Well, see, and I was like, I didn't think that. I was like, man, I apologize. Like, man, I'm sorry to call y'all out for.
Well, again, you ruled it out.
Like
well, it's better for them to come out then and again in the middle of the night.
True.
And you'd be surprised, because a lot of those the wiring in the attic, it gets old. People run across those ceiling joists where those wires are, and they'll wear them out. But insulation, not all insulation is the same. And that old cellulose insulation, if you firemen know what I'm talking about, that it's recycled paper. You can actually get a handful and you can read the print. So that sucker's it's going to burn.
Jeez.
So if you have any issues like that or hot spots, then absolutely.
What are some other common like problems that you have that you see, especially those that I like to go through what's called a pre-inspection with my sellers. If I'm listing a house for sale, let's go through, because there are things that are called out that you probably could take care of before and give the buyer some confidence. What are some things that you feel like sellers should be looking for before their inspection?
Let me get ready for this speech. I don't know why everybody doesn't do it. I don't know why everybody doesn't do that, because you and I both know, and people listening to this know, that I do the inspection. A couple of days later, you're going to write an amendment, ask for things to fix. We're all in an option period.
Yep.
You've got to get professionals out there and
Yep.
license
Yep.
this, license that.
Where
To me personally, I know you have to disclose it, and a lot of people frown on that, but to me, if I had a home and you said, hey, we need to get a pre-inspection, I'm like, cool. So the inspector comes in, says, fix a water heater, fix your panel, fix your ground faults, fix smoke detectors, fix. You fix it. Then when the sellers come in, you say, hey, we had these issues, bam, fixed, done. And the buyers are thinking, these guys are straight up people, but now the whole process is going to run smoother. You don't have to wait for a licensed electrician to come, change out the double tap neutrals on the panel when they're already 30 jobs deep into something where they might not get to it. So I think
if there was three things that came to your mind that people should:
water heater,
panel,
and I guess ground fault receptacles.
So those are the GFCI. Can you explain what those are and why they're important?
GFCIs work on new wiring and old, and context with old wiring is where you have the two-prong. Now, in late 60s, early 70s is when we started doing the transition to grounded wiring, but we know the three-prong. With that bottom prong is the ground, so it grounds to the panel, to the actual ground rod, which is 8 feet in the ground. So, back in the old days when I was a kid, when a big storm would come, you had to unplug the television, because if a tree gets hit by lightning, energizes the house, it'd pop your TVs. Well, it didn't have the ground, and now your house gets energized, it just dumps it in the ground. So with the ground fault receptacle, it trips off ground or it trips off surge. So if you have the house that was built in the 60s with just the black and the white wire, don't have the ground, you can still put a ground fault in your conducive, your wet conditions, your kitchens, bathrooms, exterior garages, outdoor kitchens, shops, whatnot. And if your hands are wet, let's say, and your kid or smaller person, woman, small person, they go to plug in, their hands could be wet and it'll slide and catch those prongs.
Oh yeah,
they get popped.
that's one of the scariest things for me.
And again, a kid is smaller, and it all depends on where the electricity runs through. So they're smaller, and their heart's going to get popped, and that's a bad day. Where a $15 ground fault, it detects that surge and it trips out.
Wow.
And so it trips out on the old wiring, it trips out on new wiring, and GFCIs. I mean, I can do 100 inspections, and 90 of them will have missing ground faults.
Where should those ground fault receptacles be?
It's your conducive for wet conditions. That's how I say it. Kitchens, but within 6 feet of water. So I'll see a lot of times in a kitchen on a remodel won't have the ground faults. They'll have them closest to the sink, but they won't have it 3 feet away. They'll have it, so it's got to be within 6 feet. Kitchens, bathrooms, exterior, garage, and a lot of times if it's updated wiring that has a ground, you can put a ground fault breaker on the panel, and it catches everything downhill from that. Because with those, if you have a GFCI and you have 10 receptacles past it, they're all GFCI protected. But
Sure.
if you have a circuit with 10 receptacles and your GFCI is on the last one, just that last one's protected. All the other ones aren't.
And that's why you should have a licensed electrician install that.
And again, that's
this knowledge
when you get to my point, when we go to fix it, you say we want a licensed electrician to fix it, not Joe Bob's, handyman.
Right.
But kind of before the inspection, if you had a pre-inspection, you could fix that, or
Sure.
Your father or grandfather,
Sure.
whoever's
Sure.
an electrician, they could fix all that. And and again, I come in and go, hey, it's right. And
especially because I remember being when we bought our house, and you get this long 30, 40 page inspection with all these pictures, and your eyes are getting big,
60.
and you're thinking, I'm about to purchase this terrible house. I need to get out of this quickly, And when in all actuality, I never know how to explain this correctly. It's not minor in a sense of like it doesn't matter, but there are things that can be taken care of easier.
Easy fix.
That would upgrade the safety in the home. That would make these systems in the home more proficient.
Well, with that, it's electrical and safety concerns, major concerns, minor concerns. Because with that, 60 pages for me that's a brand new home, because it's going to be more than that. Because I take, but we also break it down for you guys where, the realtors, they don't care about the doors, walls, floors, ceilings.
Sure.
They want to know what's the bad, so they'll flip through to the summary. Electrical and safety concerns, panel, that's what you want, because everything's bad. You don't care that the water heater works, that the window's open. You want to know what's wrong. And that's what I tell people, on inspections are like, well, what's next? And I said, well, this is where you get with your realtor. He's going to say, well, what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And you can say, well, typically it's the safety things. And I said, that's, I do my part, and this is y'all. You guys for repairs, amendments, or whatnot, and then go from there. But
do you get a lot of? I imagine not only like from builders you get heat from. Do you get a lot of heat from sellers?
Sellers, not. I've had some people call me up and go, "Oh, you screwed up." I'm like, well, how did I screw up? Well, you called out the back porch. Yeah, the back porch is over 30 inches. It needs a handrail.
Right.
It's worst case scenario. You might not have kids, but the buyer coming in might have 3, 6, and 9.
Sure.
You get a 3-year-old does a Peter Pan off a 4-foot back porch that doesn't have a handrail and breaks her neck. They're going to be ticked off, and they're not suing me. So I call it out, but. People always want to throw the home inspector under the bus. Always. But
low hanging fruit.
You think about it though, and that's this. We might hit on this later, but that's why it's so important. Now, if the buyer wants to be there at the beginning of the inspection, so be it. But that's why it's better for me, and I always ask to show up at the end, because when you're going through, you see something, and you might have to rule it out later. But when you have, the family and the grandkids, and you have 7 people walking around with you, and
you're human, so it's possible to get,
a house, there's a lot to look at.
There is. So I like I said, I could always imagine that, there are some that
They show up with their clipboard and their flashlight, and they're like, especially young kids. It's the daughter's dad shows up. It's like, I've built houses before. I'm like, well, that's cool. Then you're going to understand when I talk about, why there's cracks here. Why are there cracks there? Well, obviously you don't know as much as but
right.
But
why do people do? I always wondered that. Why do people feel like they need to prove their?
So we all show up at the same time, and I tell my wife, we chuckle about this a lot, but we all show up at the same time. Hey, my name's David. Blah blah blah. I guess we're all going to do this together. And it's, hey, have you been on the roof yet? I'm like, dude, I just got here.
I just showed up.
Yeah. So no, I haven't.
And then you got to keep the professional.
Like, well, let me do that when I get around, because I'm a creature of habit. I come in, and a good friend of mine too. He's actually was my assistant fire chief. So he's retired now. He's in Tyler, and he's been working with me a lot. And he's really swift, but he goes out with me, and he said, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So how do you do it? And I go in, stage in the kitchen, start the dishwasher, start the oven. I walk around the outside. I come in, start my differentials, heat, bathrooms, plumbing, and then once I get to a point where I got all my stuff running, because dishwasher might take 3 hours.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I go from one side to the other.
The dishwasher may take 3 hours. To run the cycle,
through,
dry.
Yeah. So you want to do it quick, and in the oven you want it to reach its temperature, and even AC differential on the furnace. I mean, it's gonna, if it's 70 degrees in the house, it's gonna pump to 140 quick. Well, it works. Well, last few days when it's been really cold, you can't check the AC, but today I can. And the AC, again, if you have an inside room air temperature of 70, if I check it in 30 minutes, it might only be, 55, which is only 15 degrees. 18 is average, but if I let it run for an hour, it might be 45. So the longer you let your AC run, and again, that's the way we check the AC to make sure, because I check a true temperature. Because, I've seen some guys put their hand up in front of the duct, it's blowing cool air. Well, if it's blowing 6 degrees, that's not good enough, and so there's a problem. And so
no, please don't tell me that.
It's only 6. It's blowing cool air. It works. Well, you walk in the house in the summertime in July, and the thermostat set to 90. Mm-hmm. I've told my son, like, what's the problem? AC doesn't work. Yeah. It's like, it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. Or it might cool a little bit, but it's it's going to freeze up or something.
What So, I mean, as far as your relationship with agents, so we talked about, of course, builders and sellers. Do you get a lot of flack from agents?
No, because most of them, you've got the old cliche, don't kill the deal. Well, I'm not killing the deal. I'm calling things out.
Right.
But the thing with me is that if I say, your water heater's deficient, and if it fails, you got water going out the front door, but technically it's a $15 fix. And, just like ground faults, I mean, that's a problem. Missing smoke detectors, that's a problem. But you can fix it. And
I always, it's so strange for me. I have had somebody, let me say, I've had somebody almost ruin a deal. An inspector that, I think stepped outside of his lane. Mm-hmm. To predict things that, that were coming. And by then I don't use him anymore, because I can't trust, that he would, just do his specific portion and let me, take over the rest. What are some things, though, that's something that I would always hope for, Inspector. Hey, give us the information. Let me educate the buyers on where we're going to go from here. What's some things that would help you as an agent? What's some things that I could do to help you?
For the inspector?
For the inspector. What could I do to help the inspector?
Well,
and go easy on. No. Give us the tips. I mean, this is important.
I can tell you, one, make sure the utilities are on. So, because again, it's time. And let's say today I've got an inspection, let's say after this at 2:00, and I show up at 2:00 and the water's not on, the AC's not, or the electricity's not turned on, the gas is off. Well, there's not much I can do. So I call you up or call somebody up, and typically it's the listing agent, so I'm not beating up the buyers. But I can't just come back tomorrow or the next day, because I have a schedule. Sure. So making sure the utilities are on, and make sure that you give us the right address. Because we, again, I've been to, and I can't tell you how many times in my career that I've showed up to a specific home, walk around the yard. I'm walking in the backyard. I'm checking doorknobs and stuff. And then I finally text the realtor. I'm like, hey, can I verify the address? And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, it's another, and again, that comes down to safety.
And you don't want to do that with Texas folk.
Yeah,
You don't want to do that with Texas folk.
And and let the sellers know. And this falls on several people too. But I've done inspections before where the sellers show up, and I'm halfway done with the inspection. They walk into my house and like, who the heck are you? And get the F out of my house. And or I go in the houses and and I start doing my thing, and I walk down the hallway and open doors, and there's people in bed. So it's just, and just let everybody be aware that I'm coming. And
especially because, you're using a lockbox in most cases.
Coming in.
I
knock.
We set an appointment for a reason.
And then I walk in, and then, I'll even go, home inspector and make entry, set up. And, by the time I get around to doing the interior, and I start walking down hallways and open up doors, and there's people in bed, and it's just,
Hi, y'all.
I start running. Don't shoot.
I'm gonna throw you a towel.
Yeah,
but I do think that there are some things, so I try, to put some things in place to communicate with the inspector, for one, because I want you to show up in a good mood.
Being aware, knowing if the buyers are showing, we talked about that because that keeps the schedule. And make sure.
Do you want to walk through the homes with buyers?
If I had my perfect day, I do inspections and never talk to anybody. I could go in, do the inspection, go home. But when the buyers are, especially young folks or first timers, when they show up and I'm done, then we can walk around, we can talk about it. And honestly, and you did this, I think it's a great idea. Rarely does a agent show up, but you can show up at the time and you hear what I'm telling them, because they're going to go back to you and they're going to say, well, there's something wrong with the water heater. Like, now that it's missing a temperature pressure, or it's leaking, or the pan's wrong, or something. So you hear the same thing I'm telling them, and so you're all everybody's on the same page. And I've thrown this out for years. I wouldn't necessarily go on your own inspection, but new agents especially, go out with the termite guy, go out with the appraisal guy, go out with a home inspector. That way, when somebody says, when you tell your buyer, hey, you need to set an inspection, well, what do they do? Well, I don't know. So now you know. And so
because whether you are knowledgeable or not in inspection dealings, because you're the agent, your buyer is actually expecting you to have some knowledge of what's going on. To be like, oh, you may not be able to say exactly, hey, this is what you're going to do right here, but the expectation that buyers have a lot. And so I try my best to set expectations for buyers before they get here. I'm texting you that morning, hey, listen, you're about to get a 60-page report.
Yeah.
Don't freak out. Okay. When you go over because I don't go to all, and I try to go with new buyers, especially, and I try to just be a fly on the wall to let you do the talking. I don't want to say something that I don't know anything about. Most of the time, I'm setting the expectation up front. Hey, you're going to get a 60-page report. Don't freak out. Don't be afraid to ask your inspector questions. I don't think it's too much that you're paying them, but you are going to pay them a good deal of money for this report. Make sure you're clear on it. So that way, when you get into the home, you can just feel, even if you decide, hey, at the end of the day, this is not as big of an issue as I thought it would be. That's okay. It's your decision, but at least you have the information to make the decision and feel confident about, what you're willing. There's no perfect house.
No.
There are no perfect houses out there. You're going to have to decide with what you can live with and what you can't live with. So go in, ask those questions. That's what the inspector is there for.
And once you get the report, because when we're doing a walkthrough, I don't hit everything.
True.
And then, when I'm doing my report, then, I might run across, a window that was broken or something like that. You can call me up and go, hey, that window in the front left bedroom that was broken. Is that an easy fix? Like, yeah, it's a double pane, pops right out, pop another one in. But yeah, I always try to answer my phone unless I'm with a buyer.
Sure.
That being said, and
sure.
Or on the roof or in the attic or underneath the house. Just so. My big thing is, if you have an issue or a question, call me or text me, and
sure.
and I'll get you back as quick as I can, because it's respect, and I I don't want to answer 3 phone calls when I should be, walking around with
Right,
my buyers.
right. And how do you, now when you are walking through with the buyers, do you have a mode of communication? Like I imagine that it's morphed some over the years of communicating with people. How are you communicating deficiencies to buyers?
I know you get this. You can read the people. Sometimes this thing's jacked up. It's or sometimes it's like, it's this is a problem and this is how you fix it. And you go to a house.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I mean it's like anything. There's pretty much not much out there that I haven't seen that I can't tell you because I've replaced water heaters.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have the 70s or 80s home that you have the utility closet in the hallway, you've got the furnace or air handler and water heater, it most of the time it might not have a pan, but there's a drain underneath it because the condensate line from the AC system. So I'm like, this is your parachute. Or if you have the one in the hallway where it's just sitting on the floor and there's no way to pan this thing out, then you have a flood stop. So you can explain that. And actually on the inspection report, I'll put an example of that. But no, communicating. I mean, everything. My coin is easy fix. And how easy, if you want to move the kitchen to the master bedroom, move the master to the garage, I mean, it's all easy. It's just relative to how much you want.
Right.
But, like pier and beam homes, a lot of people, they move, you're going to see a few more cracks. Those 40 houses, you have to grade on a curb because they weren't built like they were now. So you just kind of, these cracks, I mean, this house is 70 years old and it's moved, and that's why. But
that's a good place because I have I don't. If somebody is concerned about something, I don't say, "Hey, this is nothing to be concerned about." But of course, foundation issues are the trigger for most buyers. We'll walk into a house and this is my thing, and I would like some correction. If this would be a good time to correct it if this is wrong. I will see like a crack going straight up and down on the corner of the window or corner of the door, and I tell them, this doesn't give me great concern. No. We talk to the inspector, but it doesn't give me great concern. What are some things that if you see cracks, which kind of cracks are giving you the red flags?
Well, and I've lost agents because of this, but my mindset on foundation, there's a way that you pour the slab, and if it moves, then that's an issue. And I mean, you can go in, you can have slab or foundation movement. You get OSHAM or whoever, they dump 20, 30, 40, 50 grand in the house, move it up, and you haven't gained anything. So typically, I'm not driven by the dollar, so I don't try to get in somebody's pocketbook. So if I go through a house and I deem it structural, I used to just call the agent. We need a punt. We're past me. We're at a point where we need a structural engineer to come in and say. And when I'm talking about foundation moving, I'm talking about cracks where I put a level and I can wiggle my fingers under it. That's a problem.
Oh wow.
And it's either from negative grade or poor foundation or water leaks underneath the house. And so I try to quit because I don't want to do an inspection on somebody, charge them X amount of money, then them go get a structural engineer where he says punt. So I'll punt, but I know I've had some agents, get mad because, well, where's the report? Well, I just told you I wasn't going to finish it because you need to get somebody. And so again, now I just get confirmation. Do you want me to continue?
Right.
But again, if the foundation's moved.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. If the foundation move, what were you saying?
If it's moved, then it's beyond me because I can't verify. A lot of times too, if I go to a house and I see where there's obvious piers and where they've cut the cement out on homes where they've had foundation work, and I didn't know that prior, I'll reach out to the realtor and I'm like, hey, did you have any foundation work done? Yes. Oh yeah, they put in 30 piers. I'm like, okay, cool. Now, because now you still see damage, but they've done the repairs where that makes me feel better instead of going through a house and then calling it out. So,
so if so I said those cracks that I see that are kind of straight up and down
sheetrock.
What are some of the telltale signs that you're looking for inside the home? Well, if there are any that that people should maybe not say, oh, hey, the not the sky is falling, but the slab is breaking.
Yeah.
But something that, hey, we maybe need to get somebody else to come and take a look at this.
So starting on the outside of the house, obviously you get veneer cracks all the time. And if anybody knew how brick was put on, you have a brick ledge. Typically, it's called a masonry gap. There's about a 2-inch gap behind the brick between the brick and the actual stud walls, vapor barrier.
Right.
And they use brick ties. Well, sometimes code is every 5 bricks, and they're in line. Well, Friday at 3, you get one here, you get one here, and you can actually go up and shake those walls. So when you frame the house, all the freeze board and everything's put in. Then these brick guys put their brick on.
Right.
So a lot of times you'll see, especially on a long wall, it'll bend, crack. And now they have expansion joints for that. But you see cracks, and most people, 90%, most people say, it's foundation. Well, no, it's the brick, but sometimes when you get your fingers in there and do this, then you look to the inside because the walls are foundation, or structural. So if you go to the adjacent wall and you see diagonal cracks, because like you said, the vertical stuff, that's just sheetrock, and you get thermal expansion. Your wood, when you build a house, it's green. Over time, it's going to dry, twist, bend. So you get some seam cracks, and that's to be expected. And typically, it's going to be in the first 5 years when you see your movement. But when you see the diagonal cracks or ones with exceptional width, that's like taking that sheetrock and ripping it. So it's not this; it's actually tearing away. So and then the ones where you can actually get some separation, it's moved a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, carpet makes it a challenge, but if you have, I've seen one where they came back in, remodeled this darn thing, but vinyl floors. The slab was broken in the garage to the 2.5 inches, ran through to the front of the garage, which ran through the living area to the front door, and you could look at that vinyl, and it was just. They covered it, and it's just this huge. What are you doing?
Yeah, I should have had this video ready, but I don't do a whole lot on TikTok. But when I'm on there, I'm primarily following like DIYs, and there's a home inspector, and he is constantly calling out people that are doing flips, because of the corners that they're taking and things like that. Do you kind of have that corners that they're cutting? Do you have that same?
Well, people
experience?
cut corners on flips because they don't want to get it permitted. And if you permit it, now it depends on where you're at. But if you permit it, then the city requires license this, license that. Well, if you're out in the county, then like I said, Joe Bob do it all, can do it. And again, most time it's just a Band-Aid. They'll cover it, and that's where. Again, like the old 1960s wall or house where you walk in and you had the formal living room, the informal dining room, kitchen, and you had 14 walls. When you walk in, it's all opened up now. And you get in the attic, and it's a smooth ceiling. You get in the attic, and you see these purlin jacks resting on what used to be a load-bearing wall. That's a problem. It's unfortunate because now I'm finding it's going to be a challenge to fix that.
Sure.
Because the only way to fix that is it's got to be supported, and that's a header.
And headers are those big beams.
Doubled up
now,
2x12.
I imagine that a lot of people are watching HGTV and things like that. Now
Jim
headers
and
get a
Joanne.
lot of Jim and Joanne. Headers get a lot of publicity on those shows. They're always bringing in those huge beams to.
Well, those beams have to rest on walls. Now, granted, those walls too have to be secured because it doesn't. Your studs are on 16s. And that's to hold the sheetrock, and they may or may not be load bearing. But if you have a big, a 3x12 header, then you need 2, 3, 4 2x4s vertically to hold that as well. So I can't tell that. And the biggest challenge for me is, over these doors or when they open up a room like that and they leave, an area where it could be a header, might not. So I don't call it out because I can't verify, but. If it's a dead giveaway, then I'll beat them up pretty good. But
sure.
you see that, there's some flips that are good. I'll get up in the attic and I'll see where they got 3 2x12s. I'm like, well, these guys meant business.
Right.
I would have them. I'll tell people whenever they show up. I have a lot of people say, "Would you buy this house?" I'm like, "Heck yeah!" I'm like, maybe.
So this is not my job.
And there's been times in my career where I said, I personally wouldn't buy this house because, and again, that's the old deal killer. But as a realtor, you want the best for your buyer. So this isn't your house, and I will tell you, practically 100% of the time, if we pull away from one house, go to another one, the second house is better, hands down better.
Gotcha.
And if you try to fit that square peg in that round hole, it just doesn't work,
Sure.
And
sure.
But a lot of people are limited on funds and stuff, but you can take a lot of these houses and you can, anything you do, that house, you're gonna make money off of it. And you buy a house to make money. You don't ever buy a house and like, I'm gonna lose 20 on this, but we're gonna be happy, and that's not the case. So.
Well, as far as other things that I've run into, we talked about a few electrical things, plumbing wise. What are some things that you feel like people should be doing in order to, like you said, older people take care of their home well.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Plumbing's pretty cut and dry. Plumbing's pretty cut and dry. Nowadays you got PEX, and with new construction, I'll see a lot of times in the attic where it's not insulated. And code states, it's got to be covered with foam, then it's covered with blown-in insulation. If it's spray foam, it's different. But if you see exposed PEX is nice because it typically shouldn't burst. I've seen where it has, because everything's anything mechanical could break.
Yeah.
But it's going to freeze, and so you got to expose. You can have $1 million home. You got to expose PEX water line in the attic. It gets down like it did a few weeks ago. And now you can't use any appliance in the house.
Wow.
So, and that's just because, somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do. It was that sloppy job. So I call that out.
But so with that, what about moisture? What about water and moisture? Like I know you talked about. I like to sit when we're in the middle of a closing and it rains, I think it's a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
I say you need to see how water is affecting your house, especially if it happens during the option period. I'm like, thank you, Lord.
Yeah, go have a look.
Let's go look. Let's go schedule with the seller. I hope it pours down raining so you can see the worst of the worst. How is this?
Well, grade-wise, the only thing worse than negative grade toward the home is flat grade, because you always want water moving away. And the old Band-Aid is French drains. We got, you could have French drains around the house with 20-inch catch basins, and you come fall and you got leaves covering, and you don't have any French drains.
Right.
So negative away from the home. And but as far as water goes, you can't hide water. That's my saying. And some of the biggest issue I can see, and this falls, it doesn't fall on me, it falls on you guys, is, let's say an example is a bedroom that backs up to a bathroom, and on that wall between, you've got obvious water on the ground, on the floor, or near the bottom of the wall. I get 100% of my moisture. I can push on that sheetrock, water comes out. There's a leak, but where? So I say, obvious moisture concerns, you need a qualified contractor, plumber, whoever. So the realtor called me and say, hey, the plumber comes out and said there's not a problem. Well, did he open up the wall? No. Well, how does he know? So here's the problem: is the sellers say, I don't want anybody tearing my sheetrock out.
Right.
But you can't fix it unless you put eyes on it.
Right.
So there's an issue there. But
do you do any of like the pressure testing for the plumbing, or is it pressure testing, or is it the static?
Static pressure. Oh,
yeah,
I do that on every one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is that? What exactly is that, by the way?
Well, I mean, the city, you're going to have static pressure. That's just your. It's not in use. I mean, so it's 40 to 80 is your PSIs on that. And again, plumbing is fairly straightforward. My big thing on plumbing is the volume test, and that sounds as elementary as it is. When I run the water fixtures in the home, you've got static pressures where. If you run a couple sinks and flush commode, you got nothing. So, I mean, that might be an older house where you have galvanized that was 3/4 and it's corroded down to where you couldn't get your pinky through it. But with a volume test, let's say, again, I keep on picking on these old 60s and 70s homes, but you've got a 70s house that they remodeled. The yard is perfectly landscaped. But 5 years ago, there was 200-year-old pin oak trees in the front yard, and that house had clay pipes. And so right now it looks like a polished penny. You walk in the house and it's redone to the nines, and I run the sinks and the commode or the showers, and within 5 minutes I got water backing up around the commode.
Right.
Because you run 200, 300, 400, 500 gallons through it, it's gonna, if there's an issue with the drainage, it's gonna show.
I have seen because I always wish the only thing that I wish that could be added to those volume tests were like throwing in a wash cycle from the
well, we don't have to
washing
check
machine.
washing machines.
I don't want you to check the washing machine. I just want you to run a cycle
So,
because, and I know you can't do
and
that.
that's the drainage, and I've
because
had a couple come back like that, but
that's what happened to my sister-in-law actually.
it's the drain. We we don't check that, and
Right,
there's really.
right.
I used to have a small hose that I could hook to, and I would run them, but honestly, I quit because I was afraid I was opening myself up to liability because
Sure.
we don't have to check that.
Sure.
And I thought, if I just run it for a minute and I say it's fine, then the buyers move into the house and they say that then they're going to come back on me. And I've
Sure.
been sued one time
Uh-oh.
in my career.
Uh-oh.
It was a couple years ago. I was still in the fire department. And this was 6 months after house is less than 10 years old, high-end home in Pine Tree area. And the buyers, it was actually for the mother who was in her 90s, so the buyers were in their probably 70s. And I take pictures of all my windows. If I open a window, I take a picture of it. And I got a call because they left me a voicemail. We kind of played phone tag because I was at work at the fire department. But when I got a hold of him, the gentleman was like, "Hey, we got a picture with the windows." And I said, "Well, let me go open up the report." And I pull it up, and I've got 12 of the 14 pictures of windows. And one had a bed in front of it, and the other one was in a garage and had debris. And he goes, "We got a problem. The windows are rusted." I'm like, and the seals are broken. I said, "I'm looking at them right here. They look fine." And he said, "We got a bid for $3,400 and we want to get them fixed." I said, "So what do you want me to do?" He says, "We want you to pay for it." And I said, "You've lost your mind." And so they sued me, and we went to court, and they had windows of seals that were broken, but they were so up close that you couldn't even tell that it was a dining room. But I had pictures inside and outside, and aluminum doesn't rust.
Right.
So it's like, the
what
lintels.
Did you end up finding out what the problem was?
No, they just wanted me to pay for their windows. They were worried too because the mother that lived there had a hard time. I opened the windows, but she couldn't, so that was my problem.
Yeah.
So because she couldn't open the windows and get out, and I'm like, and we actually sat across the table, and I said, "So you're worried about your mother escaping because of a fire, and you've been in that house a year, but you're waiting for me to pay?" So how does that make sense? But yeah, it lasted 10 minutes. The judge was over there playing with his phone, and we won, and it was dumb. They wanted, they came at me with, and I don't use that realtor anymore too, because they came at me with, "Trek, don't you have insurance? We don't want to make a complaint." And so I reached out to the realtor, and she never responded back to me. So, she's been blackballed. But yeah, they
which I
tried to throw
guess
me under the bus.
it's always a tough thing because you're dealing with people that you believe in, that you trust, and affiliated professionals.
We
like
work
yourself.
together, yeah.
But you're also kind of on the hook to represent your client. And if they say, and I guess I don't know. I guess you have to draw the line someplace and say, "Hey, this is not a real issue, or it is a real issue."
Well, looking up the history of the buyers, they had a history of suing people. But again, they were trying to get, they were trying to ruin my reputation or go after my E&O instead of, there was nothing wrong with the windows to begin with. But
well, I do know that people look for an advantage. You want to believe that people will do the right thing, but people are going to people. And if there's an angle that, hey, I can get over on you with this, then you got to expect that people will try to do it. That's part of the reason why I sometimes don't show up to some inspection walkthroughs, because if I especially if I feel like the people, if I get there, I'm probably not going to say much besides asking questions, make sure that I understand. But I don't want to say anything that somebody may be able to say, "Well, you said that this was okay."
Right.
Like, wait a minute, no, that's not what I'm saying. If I'm saying that, that's why I don't say anything anymore.
Right.
I'm just going up here. I'm just gonna be quiet.
Well,
I'm
but
gonna
again,
listen.
you're there so you can understand, or you hear what I'm telling them. But but we're all in this game together. I work off referrals. You work off referrals, and we all want the best for our client. We want the best. We want everybody to be happy, and I've got to admit, I've gotten upset with some people before because I've actually gone out to do a follow-up inspection 3 times before I finally told the guy, like, "Are you going to fix it or not?" Because he calls and said it's fixed, and you go out there and it's not fixed. I'm like, what? You're wasting my time.
Yep.
But again, I try to do that for the buyers and the realtors, because again, we all work together, and a follow-up inspection is not part of it. But sometimes if people say, "Hey, can you run by?" Well, if I'm local or if I'm close, but if it's in Lindale, and I'm not going to run back to Lindale because again, that's you've got repairs, and hopefully you got a receipt, so that should be your parachute on that.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I try to make everybody happy, and again, I feel like I've put myself out because for me to be successful, I mean, there's been a couple years I've done over 500. I was doing 400 inspections when I was working at the fire department.
Wow.
So I mean, I was. I'm doing 3 a days and stuff, but, my wife is she lets me do my thing. You can't be successful unless you got somebody that says, go do it. Mm-hmm. And again, with me, I don't do the report the day of. I'm going to get it to you the next morning, but I'm going to get up, I'm going to drink my coffee, I'm going to sit in front of my computer, I'm not in a hurry, and I'm going to write you a report, mm-hmm. and I'll get up early so I don't take away, time from the family, but no, I mean, I enjoy it. I love talking to people, and obviously you can tell I don't have an issue. I was nervous for about 1 second.
Yeah, I can feel you, but yeah. I'm glad you loosened up, man. So tell me, what I don't think many buyers do is read the first couple pages of your home inspection report. What are some things on there? So, since a lot of people unfortunately are going to skip to what's wrong with the house. Mm-hmm. What are some things on those first couple of pages that you hope more buyers would pay attention to?
I actually had an engineer call me. He's like, "What are these things about this?" And this is like, "Whoa, what page are you on?" He's like, "Page 2." I'm like, "Dude, that's the standard." Don't know, but what you guys see, and I've had to explain this several times, is that it's a visual inspection. It's a visual inspection. If the house is cluttered to the point where I can't check windows, I can't get the walls, I can't check receptacles, I can't, when you guys move in after the closing, you come into a blank house. That's not what I got.
Right.
And, I've had people call me, "This receptacle's burn up." I'm like, well, that's, you could barely walk through the garage, let alone me look at a receptacle. So you just have to keep that, or things change. That's why everything is at the time of inspection, because water heaters go out, the ceiling fan will go out, windows will break, and that's why I take pictures of I've got 2 pictures of the garage door, because I've seen people call me up and go, "Hey, the door's damaged." Like, well, hang on, here it's not. But when they were moving out, they damaged it. But no, as far as SOPs, that's kind of our, we can only do so much. Wiring, I can't look in the walls. I can't look under slabs. I'll go under the house as far as I can, and I will go under the house. I'll get on the roof unless there's 20 inches of snow. I'm gonna work for you. If there's a chance that I can cause more damage, there's places where I might have to lay flat on my stomach to crawl across an attic to get to an addition. I'm not doing it because I'm not going to stick my foot through a piece of sheetrock. And so
now you got to repair.
I'm out money.
All the money you just made, you got to turn around. Yeah. Has there ever been a snake or anything under the house?
I've only seen one snake, and that was in the attic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, believe it or not. And I have a video of it because I was just videoing, because I used to blog a lot too, and I've got a website that I've got tons of videos on. But I'm over here talking about this exposed copper water lines in the attic. So if those burst, I mean, it does get cold occasionally here. And then I turned around, there's about a 5-foot rat snake. I'm like, whoa, is right there. I mean, 5 feet from me it was an old converted church, and it was sitting up there.
But you're a country boy, so I imagine. Did it freak you out pretty?
Well, I mean, it's dark, and I turn around and Shazam, so
there's not a lot of, you got to watch your step and all that up there as well at the same time.
Yeah, and I took a video of it, of course. I mean, that was kind of cool, but, I mean, yeah, there's not a lot that startles me, and dogs have an affinity of, I love dogs and they love me sometimes, I mean, I was doing one in Carthage 3 weeks ago, and I'm standing out in the cul-de-sac looking at the house. I'm 50 feet away from the front door, and the dog gets out from the backyard, runs, makes a beeline straight to me and bites me in the leg. And I'm talking to the realtor. I'm like, this dadgum dog just bit me in the leg. So yeah, he came at me, bark, 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 snap. And
did you take any action?
I and the owner's like, "Don't hit him, like, he bit me."
I'm gonna hit you instead.
Like, that's a lawsuit, man.
Yeah, that is. And that's, because where I'm from, you know, dog, can only bite you once.
That's
and
my
it's,
saying,
and
dude.
it's a
One
tough,
time.
It's a tough,
Yeah.
especially in the world that we live in now.
One time.
And I do, because I am a dog lover.
No, me too.
As a matter of fact, y'all, I was a little bit late getting here today. I had a stray husky. Huskies are close to my heart, and they're extremely smart. And so I know this one probably just escaped, ran right up to the door, right up to my garage door, about to walk into my garage with me. Fortunately, she was friendly, and everything. I love dogs, but my country upbringing, sometimes there's a clash on what I feel on the inside and what is deemed socially acceptable, these days, So that's a funny thing. As far as any other critters or anything like that, have you ever had any like raccoons or anything?
No, nothing out. I mean, not crazy, but I mean, dogs can be an issue on an inspection.
Sure.
Especially when sellers aren't there, and I want to do a good job. And there's been times where I've got in the backyard and backed away because it was tense, and I don't want to hurt anybody's dog, but I'm certainly not going to
let them.
I'm not going to take it either.
Yeah, I understand that.
But
as far as do you mind sharing, a little bit about your person? What's driving you these days? You're a workaholic.
I like to work, but I like spending time with Mama too, and the kids are older, and again,
you're an empty nester, right? Kind of.
Well, we have one's in her third year of school. She's back home because it was just. She works.
Sure,
she goes to Longview, so it's just better than paying apartments. But
she got to take care of herself, though.
Yeah. No, yeah, she's not a problem at all. But I do like to work, and again, I've been retired 3 years from the fire department, and with the fire service and the retirement of a pension, I make more money retired now than when I worked there, because we don't put into the pension. And so we make 82% of our top 3 or 5 years or so. So without me having to put in $1,200 a month in my pension, I actually bring home more money now than when I worked there, which is nice. And of course, a supplemental and you see work ethic, and this is what I try to tell my kids. They're like, well, why do you work so much? And I said, well, let me put this in perspective. If I didn't take 2 jobs a week, how would that feel? And they're like, well, that's nice. Well, let's say that's $350 a pop. That's $700 a week. I said in a month that's $2,800. In a year, that's a car. Mm-hmm. So no, I'm not going to slow down because you guys are expensive.
And you don't understand that.
I still wear old Wranglers and boots.
Right.
And you guys don't.
Yeah.
So it's all Louis this but
I think the last 3 episodes that we've had, we got a chance to talk about this. And you mentioned earlier that your son is taking his test today.
Hopefully.
I always think that it's invaluable for children to be able to see what their parents do for a living. Was it something that you thought, hey, I'm gonna get my son out here and let him see what's going on, or did it just kind of happen, naturally? He just come along with you a couple times.
It was, I guess, it was through attrition. It was, again, I became a fireman, and I, got 2 degrees from Austin College, so it's not something I planned to do, but it was something where, one, it's monetarily it's beneficial, and I told him, the more you work, the more money you make, and that's that's with anybody or anything. But you can also, I like to hunt, and I like to fish, and I'll spend weeks in the Midwest during the fall hunting, and because again, I'm the type that I've seen so much trauma in my life that I'm not waiting. I'm not going to say in 5 years I'm going to hunt. I'm doing it tomorrow.
Right.
So because again, we went to work every day and was busy, and it wasn't because people were calling us to have cake.
Sure.
But
I guess being a firefighter, you probably appreciate the now.
I appreciate everything.
You don't want to put off, because I think you recognize probably more than anybody. Life is not promised.
I can't tell you. And we had analogies for that, but you come home from work and it made you be a better husband, father, friend, because I've had my first year as a medic. I had nine PD codes, and I had twins at home that were babies. And so you just go home.
Nine
pediatric code, baby
Oh,
code.
really? Oh.
And so it's it's when you sleep with that 6-week-old in the bed and you roll over and they can't, they wake up and I get to see them on the other end of it, which, you know, it makes you appreciate things more, take things, you know, less for granted. That, you know, I didn't miss football games. I didn't miss track meets. I didn't miss. I took my children to school. I took them. I cooked. I did as much as I could with them because again, I mean, it's you know, morning rush hour, evening rush hour. People are crazy talking on phone, running red lights, and all it takes is a T-bone, and you know, and these. You know, somebody's dead, and that's why I have my kids are in bigger cars, because unfortunately, I drive a 3/4 ton, and you know, if somebody T-bones me, they're going to hit me in the knee.
Right.
Somebody T-bones somebody in a nice little sports car, they're going to take it.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, my wife drives a bigger truck than I do, and you know, says you got to be in it to win it, but no, I mean, I like to work hard. I'm easygoing. I love to talk. I hope everybody has a great experience, and I want to go home and you know, my son, he knows that the more you, and he's nowhere near being done, but when I'm ready to check him off and be done, he's going to know a lot, you know, because I have high expectations, and I don't want somebody to go, well, this is David's son, he must be good, and if he screws something up, it comes back on me. So
Sure. But he doesn't know. Yeah, hopefully it will become aware to him, you know, that hey, you've paved a good path for him. The short time that I've known you, you know, there's been nothing but great things that have been said about you. I appreciate everything that you've done on the deals we've gotten a chance to work together on, and then especially when somebody has got a good name, that's worth more than gold. You know, so David, I for one, I appreciate it. Yeah. Anything else that comes to mind that you think, you know, you think that people should know?
Oh, my goodness. I mean, there's not much I can say about the inspectors.
Sure.
If you're price shopping, your best deal might not be a $25 less guy. Experience does matter.
Yeah.
And you know, just you know,
make sure you're looking into whoever it is that you know that's doing your home inspection. It's good to ask questions. You know, your realtor may have somebody that they like to use. It's good for you. Y'all know how I am. You need to ask, who is this person? Do they have any reviews? What are their, you know?
Yeah, word of mouth. And there's, you know, and for me, there's a lot of home inspectors that do termites. A lot of them. I don't do that. And I choose not to do that because I build. And again, you know, when you're doing a home inspection, the last thing you're looking at is termites. And you know, it's a 20-hour class, and that's what my analogy is. And there's some guys that do it, and they do a good job, so I'm not taking away from that. But I choose not to because I have enough to look at. And looking for bug. You know, I'll see termites, but I'm not going to, you know, I think me sitting in front of a computer for 20 hours doesn't make me, when you can get somebody for the same price to do it. You know, and there's a lot of good termite guys out there that obviously do a good job. But, you know, my analogy is, you know, you wouldn't want your roofer over there doing your electrical work, so you might as well get an electrician. But But again, I'm not bad mouthing the guys that have done it. I just never had time. You know, when I'm, you know, doing 6 days a week of it. And,
right. But, well, and I guess that's a good thing. Lastly, what's the life of an inspector like? What
day?
Yeah, what's the normal day and week? What do you normally?
Well, I mean, this week I'm only booked up through Thursday. Which has slowed down a little bit. But, I mean, in the past, it was, you know, by Friday last week, I was booked up for the following week. And booked up means I'm doing 2 a day. So I like to do the 10 Monday, man, the phone rings. So that's when you pick up more. But it's wake up at, you know, if I've got my first inspections at 10, it's in Longview, and I know my previous inspections from the day before are going to take me about an hour and a half, then I can plan for that. So I might wake up at 5 or 6, do my inspections, get them out, get my shower, eat, go, boom, boom, and then go home, hang out with the family, do my thing, and then I'll wake up the next. I always woke up early in the mornings, and there's times when I did 3 inspections, I might have to wake up at 2:30 in the morning. There's times where I've done 4 inspections.
Wow!
Day.
Whoa!
And it's you know, summertime you can get in 12 hours of, but again,
because it's so much more daylight.
Daylight, and,
more daylight,
and I'm not.
Especially if you're not having to go up under houses or anything.
If it's
like
slab, yeah, piers slow you down. But even new construction, there's sometimes where I'll walk through and I'll check the receptacles, and I won't check a couple because I'm like, I know it's good, and I'll walk back, and I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I gotta check it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't skimp on. You know, I don't try to do
Thank
an
you for
inspection.
that. And
like the house I did with you, we talked about that. I got done early, but it was in really good shape, and good houses. If I'm not having to, take pictures, because I take 2 pictures up close and far back.
Mm-hmm.
If I can bam, window, door, receptacles, light kit, smoke detector, bedroom, done. And then just move everything. Just works well. When I download my pictures, I'm at 150 pictures. House is legit.
Yeah.
When I download and it's like 360, I'm like, man, that's a lot of
I
pictures.
just stretch those fingers out. It's going to be a long report.
Yeah, and a lot of coffee. I drink 12 cups of coffee every morning.
Yeah. What?
12. Hey, when you ride a medic,
I guess
when you're
you
up all night long,
coffee's never done anything for me. Man. I can't. I mean, it doesn't matter how much I drink. I'm going to still. If I'm tired,
I just like the taste. I mean,
oh really?
Yeah. I mean, at the fire station,
if I do,
every night
I drink it for the taste.
We eat, and it's time to watch a movie, and you'll smell that pot brewing, and because it doesn't do any good to try to sleep at night. Because at the fire station, earlier you go to bed, the sooner you're going to get up. So,
that's true. That's true. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, man, hey, David, I greatly appreciate all the information you given today. I thank you for your time. I thank you for everything you've done on the professional level as well. Y'all, if you are needing a home inspector, you don't have to wait till your house is under contract to sell. If you're thinking about selling your house and you want to have somebody come take a look at it, David, what's a good way to reach you?
Website, davidsmithinspections.com. Okay. And of course, Gmail, davidsmithinspections@gmail, or Google. I've been around long enough that it comes up pretty quick now. Sure. But go to my website. I got piles of pictures, and then I haven't updated it in a long time, but I've won Locals Love Us last 4 years. And
okay, good.
So I've got my pictures, and actually this last picture I had my son, who's trained to be an inspector, my daughter who's a realtor, and so the 3 of us, the young lady from Locals Love Us wanted us to do it at a fire station because they've always come out to the fire station. And so we swung by 5s over in Pine Tree and stood in front of one of those engines. But so yeah, just and call early, and a lot of times with agents too, if you think you're going to hit on a contract, call, and because it's easy to put you in for Thursday and then cancel, and it is to call me and and say, can you do it tomorrow?
Right. Trying to squeeze me in. And so that's a great way to contact David. And I'll put your information also in the description. Y'all, if you got any questions or anything like that, I found David to be pretty accessible as long as he's not walking through with buyers or up at 2:30 in the morning doing his report. Don't call him while he's getting his 12 cups of coffee in.
Well, leave a text during the day, and even if you need something, because again, it's just respect. I'm not going to walk around unless it's family or something But if my phone's blowing up, I'm not going to take away from the couple that's walking through a house when I can, reach out to them later. So it's no disrespect to you guys. I'm just being respectful to the people I'm with at that time. So
definitely, for your protection, get a home inspection.
Absolutely.
Existing home, new build, doesn't matter. Get a home inspection. Get the information. Y'all know me. You can't make decisions without information, and you really need good information. Get as much information as you can so you can feel confident about the decision that you make. If you've got any questions or anything, please feel free to reach out to me, 903-806-6905, or you can email me at thejohnsonwayrealty@gmail.com. Thank y'all so much, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, subscribe on YouTube. You can subscribe on Spotify if you're listening to the audio version, and we'll catch y'all on the next episode. Thank you.